Hello and welcome to our Mission Team podcast. My name is Patrick Nagy and my guest today is Mike Laflin, not only an expert in teams, but also in building communities. Mike was one of the first persons in the early 90s to build communities around special interests. He then was one of the first to go onto the World Wide Web with his community spirit. And today, he is the visionary creator of globalsustainablesport.com, a platform that for sure will be another great community venture. So, hello, Mike. Very happy to have you on the podcast here.
Hi, Patrick. Great to see you. Great to catch up with you. Been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We have just realized we know each other for 33 years already, so been quite a while.
Right.
And as you know, this podcast is about team and team's development and team's progress, etc. But our product's also called Mission Team Digital Team Building. And actually, one of the topics I want to go a bit deeper in with you is this digital development, this virtual development.
Right.
You have always been the person I know personally who has been the most advanced on this. You actually started collecting information for a very specific group and put that in the virtual world at the time where most people thought, oh, Mike, you're going to go bankrupt right away.
They were probably right, but anyway,
So why were you so convinced that this was going to be the future?
Okay, so let's take it back to that early stage when, kind of I met you, Patrick. My background's data and technology, so I learned to be a programmer in a company called Mark Rich, which is now Glencore, Swiss-based company. And I built information systems for them. And what was really interesting about that journey was Mark Rich built a huge trading system, $24 million they spent in the early 80s on this thing. And I changed it because the digital platform they created didn't suit the company, because companies tend to work in teams, as you're talking about. And so aluminium really didn't care what oil were doing. They wanted to know what aluminium was doing. So they focused on their product and their area. And we built little information systems for them so they could do that type of thing. And then when I came to sport, what I noticed is the international federations all worked in silos. Athletics worked on athletics, tennis worked on tennis, sailing worked on sailing, and I was working for those three international federations. And they all kept asking me when someone else's event was on or what else was going on. So I realized there was a need to aggregate data and be able to share it with people on a platform where they could see this thing. But in 1991, there was no such thing as the internet or email or the web. So we produced it on floppy disks, 8.5-inch floppy disks. And oh my God, when someone told me there was a website that we could put our information on and share it with people, instead of producing a monthly update, which is what we did in those days, so we used to send disks by post to people, we had this opportunity to move into this new digital age. So SportCal's first website was 1997, is that right? Just trying to think of the timings on this.
That was just right after Atlanta, I remember.
Yeah,
I was one of the very first subscribers.
You were, absolutely. And you know what, it was really, kind of unusual, I think, in the sense that we were charging for information. I mean, it's interesting. Elon Musk is going towards charging people for Twitter nearly 30 years after I was charging people on SportCal. And a lot of people said, well, the web is free information, the web is this, the web is that. But my argument was, you can't get this information on the web. It's just not freely available. And we're aggregating data and we're aggregating information. So people will pay for this information. And we built as you know, a huge subscriber base around the world. And it was that aggregation of content and bringing it to one platform, worked. And obviously you've got Facebook and everyone else who's kind of worked on the aggregation of content and then using advertising to do that around the world. And Twitter's obviously done the same. But in my area, it was a niche product. There was only a few people like yourself who probably really wanted to know who was buying and selling rights and things like that. But it was a community. And obviously in those days, we didn't have things like this where you could talk to somebody in another part of the world so easily. So community was built around initially who you met at events or at conferences or things like that. But the sports industry is a relatively small community, I think. And so through Sportel, we were able to meet broadcasters who wanted to know TV rights. So Sportcal was the name because it was the sports calendar, but in fact, it morphed into something completely different by the time we got into the 2000s, because we realized that what people wanted was media rights information and sponsorship deal information. And then latterly, it became about hosting and bidding for events, and then measuring the impact of sport. So, but yeah, digital is really amazing what you can do with it. And now, of course, post COVID, things like this where we're talking to people. I mean, I love it now because I'm sitting at home in my house in Kingston, able to talk to anybody in the world, and so the need to actually hop on a plane and fly around the world diminishes. I still like going and meeting people in person, but actually I think as we move along, the digital experience, like you're showing here, will just grow and grow.
So you actually started with data gathering and sharing data. So very much what people believe computers should do.
Yeah.
And let's jump 2 decades. And now you're trying to build really a community around sustainability in sport. That's your newest project. So how does that differ? Because now you're not just into information, you're also into kind of connecting, for sure, emotions, beliefs, values. So how did you come about that?
So, for me, I've always, I'm a big sort of strong believer in planet and people. I've been very focused. I'm sponsoring a student at Exeter University who's now also working with Bristol University on studying the environment, studying actually the impact of sport and leisure on marine life. So, animals, people, planet, they're all kind of big things for me. And obviously, we're seeing a huge impact from climate. And for me, there's been a lot of social impacts from COVID. There's been a lot of climate things going on. So it's an area that I read about, I'm interested in. And then I realized that actually sport can play a really huge role in the space because unlike what is currently going on with the whole ESG thing, sport has a big S. So S in ESG really stands for social engagement through companies. So, do you treat your staff well? Do you have X, Y, and stuff? But it's mostly an internally focused thing. Whereas sport has a real external social value, which we never ever really do well with, I don't think. I think we really lack the way that we can drive good social benefits from sport. I've seen it so many times where major events roll into a town and the social legacy is just not there where it could be. And yourself, I mean, you've seen it, loads of people see this all the time. And obviously there's an environmental piece there as well. But so what I realized is that COVID had a big impact on events. In fact, what we saw is that most federations, like the Olympics, literally just got the event through the door. They cancelled everything. No fans in the stadiums, no social programs, forget the environmental programs because we've got PPP and we've got loads of plastic all over the place. And so it was literally, we're just going to put the athletes in the stadium. They're going to play their game. It's going to get televised, and that's it. But we know that that's not the product that sport is. And so what I saw was a lot of people then talking about purpose, a greater purpose than actually just literally doing that. And it got me thinking, who's doing this? Where are they doing it? What are they doing it? And how do I communicate what people are doing? And my skill set is really data gathering, data aggregation, and then communicating, connecting people. So I'm going to try and use my strengths to make a difference, do something. I mean, I'm 63 now. We're both at that latter age of our working lives, but hey, I still think I've got a few good years in me. And the fact is that technology and the digital age is transforming the way we can do things.
But do you also think it is not only transforming it from a work process point of view, but also from an exchange point of view? I mean, I'll try to explain that. I always refuse to make anything online as seminars because I didn't feel the social presence, how I call it. With the newest technology, I now can actually bond. Like what we are doing now is we can move our bubbles, we can get closer or further. But how can we do that?
I agree, and I think. Listen, I think it's going to be a mix of things. I went up to Scotland to host cities the other day, and I went by train because I thought it was going to be easier, nicer, obviously better environmentally. And ironically enough, it was foggy in London, and all the flights got cancelled. But I was able to interact with a group of people for a period of time, and that's fantastic. But actually, there's a bunch of people I missed there because I didn't stay for very long, and so I'm connecting with them, through Teams, through other things, whatever. But I do think that the emotional connection we get with being together is huge. But I think that these are now becoming so much more appealing, and the thing is, we can do it so easily now. I think that, but if we can get community, because I think what you're offering here is the way to create community and conversation, and I think that is the bit that's really important, because I think community and conversation. If I had kind of my team of people on this call now and they were chatting away, I think that would be fantastic. I think that Teams works pretty well, but it's still not quite the same experience, isn't it? You don't feel like you're kind of in the same room, but I sense that this is a little bit better than that.
I don't. I like to be moving in a room. I don't like to be. Like it's the guy is always on the left corner. It's always square, etc. And I think that's the difference. It's the difference between exchanging information and conversation. And a conversation to me has this element of social presence. So the question is, will we be able to generate this at a very large scale as well, or is it? To me, it's more than 10, 12 people in a room, whether it's digital or virtual, is always kind of difficult to connect.
Well, I think here's the challenge for you and your software. The thing that you lose in a big group is you can't just have a one-to-one conversation with someone while other people are talking, because it always gets dominated. I find that on Zoom. I don't know if you've ever done
well, believe me, our technology allows exactly that. You can, on the same screen, you can talk, and the other people don't hear you. And this is you from time to time need to have this little kind of chat. So
because that's what we do at dinner parties, isn't it? Sometimes we talk
exactly.
Sometimes it's just a one-to-one with someone sitting next to you. The difference with digital, and this is what I hate about, I don't know, let's say going to a wedding, or, I went to a conference in Switzerland the other day, and, and the dinner in the evening, you're stuck next to two people for the entire night, although there's a whole group of people in the room. So you can't just pop off and say, oh, I'm going to go and have a chat with this person because he looks interesting. You know, if digital technology allows me in a group of people to go, oh, actually, I fancy going and chatting to that guy there because I know he's so-and-so, or maybe I don't even know who he is, but he looks interesting, you know. So I think that's where the technology might be able to do something that we can't even do when we're sitting in a dinner party, which is, you know, flip to conversations because you're not actually physically sitting next to that person. You can just go and have a chat with them. So maybe this actually creates a far more interesting equation than what we have today. So we could have a dinner party, literally, where you just swap around chatting to people in the dinner party.
So it's really interesting that two kind of let's say sports dinosaurs like you and I now find ourselves one on the sustainability end, the other one on the core value of team end.
Yeah.
We need to have our next podcast in 10 years and see where we go from there.
Yeah.
In the meantime, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mike. It was great insight.
Absolute pleasure. Great to see you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to our Mission Team podcast. Do not forget to register for the next episode and visit us on mission-team.com.